story like the back of my hand, 'cause I've heard it all before. You always say that you're the one that's in demand, and I don't know the score. And all the times that you have
Well, death and taxes are the only certainty. Well, 20% of people of society. Yes, I have made it on my own in this world. Well, nothing to get a turn around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna start the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for preservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna start the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for preservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buckling up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you. Welcome. Just beginning to sign in, people. I've got a little thing to say, but I'm not going to say it now. Let's go say hi to my three wonderful guests. Kerry, it's so good to see you again. Hello. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, John. I hope you're all right.
So we're absolutely fine, and all the better for having you with us. And then to our regulars, the terrifying Jane Strange. She's not at all bossy, but she is terrifying. And the wonderful man of knowledge and rants, Paul Daly. Yay!
Hi.
Let's go straight on. Harry, moment of your week.
My week.
Your week.
Well, it's not a very happy one, to be honest. And I will say, because I can say, obviously, you know, I'm a very proud member of a trade union in the non-paid sector of it. And I'm saying this on a personal thing, not my role within that union, shall I say. That we've learned this week that our General Secretary promised us something at our national conference, and it's come to light that we're not getting it. And that's really, really disappointed me for the work I've previously done. And I just feel, I won't swear, but I really feel insulted and fobbed off. And I am really upset about it. And it's really bothering me. It bothered me. It is still bothering me. It's not really a moment of the week. It's more of a infuriation of the week from my part, shall I say.
Thank you. When you let down, it's worse than if you never had it in the first place, isn't it?
Well, we did have it, and then we got promised it, and it's not going to be replaced.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Jane, moment of your week.
So there were
interrupt Jane. Jane always has about 15 moments of the week. Should have choose this one? Should have choose that one? And they're always fabulous. And sort of, we could do a show where Jane shared her moments of the week. But which one have you chosen for us this week, Jane?
So there was a barrage of infuriating things happening this week, and I changed my mind about 10 times. So what I've decided to talk about was environmental protesters were taken to court for their actions, and the judge told them that if they mentioned a climate crisis, if they mentioned the reason for their actions in court, they would suffer further penalties. They weren't allowed to say why they were doing what they were doing. They broke that ban and they mentioned climate crisis, and they've been sentenced to 7 weeks in prison for mentioning that the reason they did what they did was climate crisis, and that made me furious.
I mean, I have no sympathy for them. If they were told not to do something and they did it, well, then there's got to be consequences for that. What do you know why the judge said they couldn't explain to the court why they were doing what they were doing? I mean, what was the thinking behind that?
I don't understand his thinking. I understand if you're told you can't mention something because it could have implications for another case, for sensitive information about someone else, but I can't possibly understand why it's justified to tell them they can't say that, because it matters. A third of Pakistan was underwater a few months ago. Lots of people died. They're trying to stop that happen again, and they're not allowed to say that, and they have to stand there and say that they've done these things for no apparent reason. It's wrong.
It's horrific. So one of the ladies in Just Stop, I can't say ladies nowadays, I'm told off every time. One of the women in Just Stop Oil is from this constituency, and sort of just incredibly brave and just going before the court time. I think that would terrify me and you probably, and sort of and they're just such wonderful people, and solidarity with them. Paul, you've got two. You'll have two.
Yeah, I'm wrapping mine up into the mess that is the party formerly known as Labour Party. It's been reabsorbed into Change UK this week, which is really good because at least we know where they stand. So Change UK obviously broke away from the Labour Party a couple of years ago and tried to make sure that Labour would never win an election under Jeremy Corbyn. This week, they've been invited back, although we did find out that Angela Smith, who was one of the people who broke away as an MP for the Change UK party, on their launch described Ash Sarkar on live TV as being a funny tinge. You're a funny tinge, you know what I mean? Like, because she had brown skin. and this like kind of weird racist kind of up their own backside party. So they've been welcomed back. She's been back in for ages, but no one had told anyone. This week, Mike Gapes has come back in. So like the Labour Party, right? If you're in the Labour Party, you're actually in Change UK now, rather than the Labour Party. So that's your position. I think, like as a party, accept it and either back it or do something else. Then the other thing was Starmer's interview with Nick Ferrari about Sue Gray. When, like, you know, like, I've no idea. Are there only about 8 people in the entire world or something? It's like Sue Gray does this report, and then the Labour Party have to hire her for some reason. Why do they have to hire her? Why was she in Northern Ireland at one point running a pub on a gap year? Like, no, she wasn't. She was a security asset there, probably, allegedly. And, you know, like, these people are so weird. They all hire each other. They all know each other. Well, anyway, Nick Ferrari said, when did you approach Sue Gray to Keir Starmer? And he went, well, I assure you there's nothing untoward going on. And there's nothing untoward. And Sue Gray has done this and done that. And you're like, yeah, but I asked you when you approached her. Well, I assure you there's nothing untoward going on. There's nothing that says something untoward is going on. Then answering that question when you haven't been asked it. Like, when did you speak to her? I didn't burn him. So yeah, there's the mess that is Change UK. I mean the Labour Party,
which is I saw a funny thing on Facebook which says that the Labour Party is like one of those bands that you really loved in the 1970s, and sort of every member is left by now, and sort of basically they're just sort of you go and see them and it's just a kind of a second-rate tribute band playing outdated hits. And I just thought it just about sums up what's going on with Labour at the moment.
It's funny you should say that, because I did this really long rant before to Laura, but it was like as if like they were a Beatles tribute band, and like at least people all like the Beatles, but then they come out and they play.
Don't insult the Beatles, Paul. I will.
No, but like I'm saying, like imagine if someone said they were a Beatles tribute band and came out and played Mumford and Sons songs, you'd be like, everyone's called Tarquin. You know what I mean? Like, that's more like it. So they're not even playing the songs of the band that they say they're a tribute act to. They're playing some like posh lad band.
Get me slung out on that. That's all there is to it. It's the end of that discussion. And I have one thing before we finish this, and I'm going to try and get it over a bit by 10 past. There's a show on Radio 4, which if you haven't listened to it, you ought to. It's called Rutherford and Fry, The Curious Cases of Rutherford and Fry. And what people write in with their questions, and they answer them using the power of science. I was trying to do the introduction with my members, and they made a right mess of it. But there's something. But what they do is at the end, they have a period where they see what their listeners have written in saying, and they chose a name for their listeners. They call them the Curios, and they let the listeners choose their own name. The listeners made it. So listeners, if you're listening, you think, what name would you choose for yourself? Do you want to call it, I mean, we're political. Do you want to call yourself the Polos or the Purios? I mean, sort of, I know you call yourself socialists, but sort of choose yourself a name and make and think about it. And we'll have another go next week. We'll see if it's sort of, because at the moment I just got to kind of talk about our listeners. I'd love to talk about our. Anyway, whatever you call yourself. And let's move on.
Now it's time for the big story.
No, Kerry isn't at a rave, Neil Terry. It's just.
Why? I don't even know why it's like flashing, actually.
It's to do with the syncing of your camera and your light, I think. Sort of the.
I'm not, my house isn't flashing when I'm not here.
So we'll just all get a migraine. It's okay, right? The big story this week, of course, is the Northern Ireland. Oh, by the way, so some of you are talking about the Stop the Boats podium, and that will be our big story next week. Outrageous, totally outrageous. But what we'll do is we'll move to this week's big story, which of course is the Windsor framework. The Windsor framework. Jane, it's a deal, but is it a good deal?
It's better than what they had before. So the EU, I think, has dropped 7 sets of legal proceedings against us for the infringements from Boris Johnson's protocol. So that's got to be a positive thing. Possibly Northern Ireland might have a sitting parliament in Stormont. Possibly. They haven't had one for a year because of the selfish actions of the government in this country with the Northern Ireland protocol. It also means there's going to be a stop on restrictions for medicines and other items, pets as well, moving across the Irish Sea. There's going to be a green lane for goods, I think, between the UK and between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and a red lane for other goods that will be still subject to more restrictions. Westminster will still be setting the VAT rates in Northern Ireland. Ultimately, the EU Court of Justice will have the final say on whether laws are implemented, although prior to that, Westminster and Northern Ireland and the Northern Irish House will be able to ask for any new laws that cause issues for Northern Ireland to not be applied, and that will then go to the EU Court of Justice. So it's better than what we've got. I don't think there's an ideal solution to this awful situation that we've been put in, and that Northern Ireland has been put in. I go back to fix this situation completely and stop it from having happened. So I think this is probably a good compromise, however much I dislike some of the people involved in it.
Rishi Sunak was calling it a decisive breakthrough and claiming that it will bring stability. But this all depends on other people, doesn't it? I mean, so we're going to be talking to Paul in a moment. He'll talk in detail about sort of the reactions of the DUP. But sort of, I mean, overall, how much chance do you give this of actually improving the situation?
I think hopefully it will, and hopefully there will be an agreement about this, and the Stormont will sit again. It seems like there's conflicting opinions. I won't go into the situation with the DUP, but I hope that something more positive than what has been can come of this, because we've just gone through it. We're still going through it. We've just gone through this horrific cost of living crisis with spiralling food costs, energy bills. I think Northern Ireland has got some of the worst NHS waiting lists, and we've got a real crisis in the NHS. They haven't had a sitting parliament for a year now throughout all of this. It's horrific. They really need that back. So I hope this will get that back for them.
Two further issues which are sort of tangential, but which I'd like to know what you think about them. The first one is King Charles III. All hell let loose because he met Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, what's your view on that? I couldn't give a damn, quite frankly. Is this a constitutional gaffe?
I think it's not appropriate for the royal family, I don't think, to be involved in any way in the government of this country. So for them to be meeting, the leaders of the European governments coming across here to negotiate with our government, I don't think it was appropriate. So I don't think it should have happened.
But the monarch is the head of state and meets a whole load of foreign leaders. I mean, Queen Elizabeth met Idi Amin and sort of people like that. Really? I can't understand it. And the second question is that when Rishi Sunak was trying to sell it to the people of Northern Ireland, he was saying, listen, everybody, you're in the best position in the United Kingdom because you can trade freely now with the United Kingdom, and you can trade freely with the European Union, and he was saying it was an absolute star of a thing to have this. And people have been pointing out that's what we used to have before Brexit. I mean, do you think he shot himself in the foot here?
I think he seems to have not. I think he thinks he's handled it better than he has. He said this, and the irony wasn't lost. I think that the only reason that any of us lost that, the only reason Northern Ireland lost it, was because of the actions of a Tory leadership that he supported. And then, and he was, I think, the supporters of Boris Johnson seem to be a bit offended as to the way that he's treated Boris Johnson in this situation. And then he went back to Parliament, and I heard him making a comment about von der Leyen, about at last the European Union, who've been stalling for 4 years, have let us do this. And I just thought, I hope she hears that you've said that, because it's just so two-faced. Yeah.
I mean, they're an appalling bunch, aren't they, the Tories? Paul, is it going to work? Talk to us about the DUP, because coming clean right at the beginning of your question, I think they're going to reject it, and then what's going to happen? But sort of talk to us about what you feel about the response of the DUP.
The DUP aren't exactly the wisest of people, are they? Like, they really don't believe in evolution. Some of them. When there was like a shortage, when things got more expensive, like Sammy, what's he called him, said just go to the chip shop, like when there was going to be food shortages after Brexit, just go to the chip shop, like that food's just magicked up. Those potatoes just appear in the chip shop. So they aren't the wisest of people. The problem here is our political class really don't know what they want. So the DUP don't want to be any different. They want to be the UK, and they really, really, really want to be the UK. They want nothing to do with Ireland, really, and everything in the Good Friday Agreement was a compromise that they took, and they took to over time, and the leaders who actually fought against each other in the 70s and so on ended up reconciling and improving things, and they kind of understood, actually this is better than what we had, and this is, it's nicer to live in peace. I don't want our children to behave like we did. And then and now the DUP have kind of forgotten that a little bit, it appears, and they seem to just want to be exactly like the UK, even if the UK wants to like hamstring itself. So when you're talking about trade and stuff like that, when Sunak the other day was like, this great deal that you've got, imagine how good your deal is. That was like the only way it could possibly work in the Good Friday Agreement not to fall apart, and they don't want that. So, but they also wanted to leave the EU, and I think we needed some political honesty, and we should have been saying to people, if we leave the EU, we can't have this if we want to leave the EU in the way that we're saying we want to leave the EU as Conservatives, DUP, whatever. The Good Friday Agreement can't exist. And then Boris Johnson came along and lied and says, oh no, we can do all this, and then made the compromise deal, because he knew he was lying, and then they made the compromise deal. It's time our politicians stood up and just started telling some truths. Like, you can't have it all your own way. There is a thing called compromise, and people say that socialists are really uncompromising. They expect things. We compromise all the time. Everything that we do is compromised. We get none of our own way, and even our representatives start from a compromised position and compromise further. That's where we are at the moment, and honesty would be massive.
Let's drill down into what the DUP is saying. Let's talk about the DUP's position. The Irish Times was quite good on this, because what they said, the DUP is in a terrible position. If it accepts the deal, it will shed votes to the TUV, the extremist TUV. Sort of, if it rejects the votes, it'll shed votes to the alliance. They're saying they need till April. I mean, sort of, do you not accept that the DUP is sort of politically is in a very difficult place about this? Donaldson wants to do it, accept it. He's saying it's significant progress, but they can't, because they're terrified of the TUV, which have already come out and said that they're going to reject it.
Well, again, it's a consequence of them lying, saying we can do this and we can have this, we can have our cake and eat it kind of thing. They never could. So it might have created a political problem for them, But that's because they created that problem by lying in the first place. If they'd just said in the first place, no, that's not possible, it's not sensible, we're going to need to do something, we're going to need to compromise at some point, then maybe the electorate would have known, and maybe those people who have been lied to, who, you know, most people aren't into politics in the way we are. They switch on the TV for 15 minutes a day, watch the news, see a little bit, and they go, all right, okay, that's it. And if they see a politician saying, this is possible, they kind of take it at face value. Whereas the politicians know they're lying to try and win votes. And that's the problem with our political system. Everything's about winning votes. Nothing's about telling the truth. And we're so far removed from the truth, whether that's, you know, like Starmer, like I mentioned earlier on, was clearly lying about Sue Gray. Something's amiss there. But every political leader appears to be lying about everything, and it comes back to bite them and creates further political messes down the line. So that's the position the DUP have put themselves in. They've lied, and now they're stuck with the lies that they've told, and politically they've made it very difficult for themselves. But that shouldn't mean that they shouldn't tell the truth. Can we not just do things that's for the good of everyone rather than for the good of their own votes?
Well, let's talk about that then. Let's talk about the position of the TUV. Now, the TUV are saying that it doesn't address the democratic deficit, that they are still subject to foreign laws and foreign stuff, that the European Court of whatever is still in charge. That they're saying that it's very little different to the protocol in its basic form. What they're saying is they're sick of people bowing the knee to Brexit, and that they are subject to foreign laws. They want to be subject only to British laws as part of the UK. Now they got a point, haven't they?
No.
Sorry, was this aimed at me, or was this aimed at Kerry?
Aimed at you, Paul.
All right, sorry.
I think Kerry was just expressing.
It's quite amusing that they're upset about being subject to foreign law when it's Ireland and they've been under they were a British colony. It's foreign laws. Well, let's listen to the British. They're our friends. Remember when they did a famine here for us? Remember when they forced a famine onto us, but bit of a genocide, that kind of thing. We're into that, but we're not into these Europeans who come up with their laws. Honestly, it's complete nonsense. What laws are they talking about? Are they talking about trade deal laws? Are they talking about food safety laws? Who knows what laws they're talking about? Everything's just I want to be able to eat tax. I want to be able to have my food absolutely full of pins.
Sovereignty.
Pins that go in my throat because I'm British and I want to eat pins. It's what are they talking about? They are food safety laws.
I'm cutting off the rant before he gets going. Last question, Paul. Do you not think that the problem with the TUV and the DUP to a degree is that actually at base they want a border with Southern Ireland? They want the border to be there, whatever the cost. And so this is the question coming to Kerry, but that and if it costs trouble with the IRA, they feel that they're ready for it. Do you think that is what's going on at base there?
Yeah, absolutely. They want to be British. They don't want anything to do with Ireland, although they're quite happy to get an Irish passport, because when they said, when we leave the EU, we can keep the benefits because you can still get an Irish passport. The DUP were advocating for that at the time and say, vote Brexit, but get an Irish passport, because we're special. But we would want to be exactly the same as Great Britain, but not really the same. So, it's just, honestly, it's the cake and eat it syndrome. But yes, I believe they do want a border.
I think unless I move on to Kerry, she's going to explode here. The question to you, Kerry, is this. Is Rishi Sunak trying to square the circle? Is he trying to reconcile the Good Friday Agreement with Brexit and the two are irreconcilable. Is it sort of? Do you think it's just impossible what they're trying to achieve?
Definitely, and I think that the DUP, seriously, they're going to bed with Theresa May. They knew what they were going to get. And I think that they're the minority, like the minuscule version of the Tory party in Northern Ireland. My mum's born and bred in Belfast, grew up in the Troubles, and getting into bed with Arlene, whatever she's called now. But I just think, yeah, they wanted power. They got the power because they're going to bed with the despicable Tories, but now they're spitting the dummy out because they're not getting their own way. Where they want, as someone else has just said, they want the cake and eat it, and they're like spoilt brats over it. And that's the reason why Stormont isn't inserting and stuff like that, because it's the DUP party in Northern Ireland are like spoilt brats. It's their way or no way. So that's why there's no governing body in Northern Ireland, because of the DUP.
If do you see it's the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement next month?
Yeah.
Do you think that we'll be able to celebrate a 25th anniversary? I mean, is the Good Friday Agreement at risk?
Definitely so, yeah. Like, I know, like, the Good Friday Agreement, and there's a different with, like, religious stuff in Northern Ireland. Like, my mum's a Catholic in Northern Ireland. Was. My family still live in Ireland, are good Catholics. Yeah, because I think that they're not bothered what they get or what's going to happen. Again, like spelt brat syndrome, as long as they get their own way, they're not bothered about the implications about anybody. But then they want the cake and eating it, saying you can get an Irish passport. It's double standards, and it's never going to be resolved why you've got people in that mindset in Northern Ireland.
Jane, sort of having listened to everybody, do you want to sum up for us what we feel about this deal?
I don't. I mean, I think this is good as it's going to get. I just hope that we can try and fix the mess we've created. As an English person, I feel deeply guilty for what the selfish Westminster government has inflicted upon the people of Northern Ireland. I just think it's terrible that we've done this to Northern Ireland, left them without a sitting government for a year through vanity of our ruling Westminster party. It's unforgivable.
Do you think that
really.
the Tories are going to accept it or reject it? I mean, it's a substantial bit. I mean, Bojo says he's going to reject it. I mean, sort of, do you think that soon I can be able to carry the majority?
I think he probably, I mean, he can get it through with Labour's support, can't he, anyway? If not, but obviously that's not a good mood for him politically. I hope that his days are numbered in our government anyway. I think he probably will. These people are slippery and manipulative, and they'll offer what they need to offer to whoever they need to offer to get their deal through, won't they? So I think probably, hopefully he will.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I like you, Jane. Let's hope it goes through, and let's hope we get as a government in Stormont. And I mean, at least we can stagger on for a while. And thank you everybody for those comments. And I noticed the time is exactly 9:30. I told everybody off about timing before we started, and we'll move on. The whole thing today is kind of Hancock again in the news. I mean, do you really want to sort of, Paul? Could anybody care less? Does any of it matter? Tell us about it and tell us whether you think we ought to be getting upset about it.
Okay, so Hancock's it is quite funny in a way. It is quite funny in a way that Hancock paid someone to be his ghostwriter for his memoirs. He's trying to make some money out of his awful things that he did where he killed loads of people. So he got Elizabeth Oakenshaw, who again is an absolute ghoul of the highest order.
Stop. Isabel,
Well,
you got the wrong name. Ha,
What did I say?
no.
ha, ha.
What did I say?
Elizabeth?
Sorry. So anyway, it's
Yes.
Isabel Oakenshaw. So
Listen,
but she,
listeners,
regardless of whether I got her name wrong,
I'm not just
The lady who said a packet of porridge would feed a family.
yeah, she's
Carry on,
an
carry on.
absolute ghoul, and she's this like she was a rent-a-gob on Newsnight for a long time, wasn't she? And you know she's been pushing this narrative all the time. Well, anyway, she's shown how duplicitous she is. She's like, yeah, I'll take your money. And then I'll kind of push some fame for myself by publishing your WhatsApp messages because it's in the public interest. And it's like, oh, how stupid is Hancock like to give her access to those things when she's clearly... I've got her name wrong in two ways, by the way. I said Oakenshaw, not like, and I meant to say Oakshot. But anyway. So he's foolishly... So
She's still a cretin, Paul.
yeah, so he's foolishly given her access. She's spread it everywhere. And it's just showed us all the things that are true about these Tories, like the way they've been talking about each other and saying like teachers just were lazy and, you know, and all this stuff that we knew at the time. Like if you go back in our shows, we were hypothesizing that they were saying these things in private. You know, like it's not a surprise to us. What I do think might be happening is you were talking about whether or not people care. I think people do care, but they are so inundated with so much horrible stuff from all sides. So you've got, like, as I said, you had the Sue Gray stuff that the Tories are all over, which was really shooting themselves in the foot, Labour, by like employing the person who investigated like the dodgy goings on in Downing Street, which now it looks like a political thing rather than a legal thing. But like that's part of it, and all these horrible things like that we see every day. I think this is a tactic in a way. I think Matt Hancock's a bit of a puppet in this, but I do think that it's like the dead cat thing of throw these awful things on, just throw everything on the table, so you're so confused as to what to focus on that, you know, you get tired. You get tired and bored of all the sleaze, and in the end you just kind of go, whatever, get on with it. And I do think our political class is really leading us to that thing where you think, actually, you know what? You lot get on with this. I'm sick to death of you. And in times gone by, maybe people would have had a bit of a revolution, whereas now I think people are so worried about paying the bills that the government's got everyone into debt in such a way, like, rather than giving public money, they've actually got us into private debt. So people are actually, I can't afford to just take a week off work or something like that and go on strike. I can't afford to take that direct action. They've really, really got everyone over a barrel because everyone is in debt to private companies. Everyone's worried about where the next meal's coming from. They've got us paying like 4 times the electricity and gas bills of every other country in the world. They've got us just running scared all the time, and then they're saying, yeah, and we did this and we did this and we did this, and you know what, we're dead awful, but we don't care because we'll do another awful thing tomorrow. There were so many things, like moment of the week, I could have said about 15 different horrible things that have happened. It is becoming exponentially horrible in the political world in the UK, and these WhatsApp messages are just confirmation of all those things that we know. But at the same time, it's just overwhelming. That's and it's very hard to deal with. My
question to you: is there anything here which we didn't know already?
Well, it's confirmation rather than, like, we suspected. Whether or not we knew, we did know, didn't we? We know in our hearts. We know what sort of people these are, and we know what we think of these people. I think most people are there. You know, when I talk, sometimes I think people are a bit naive and they think these people are all right. And I think last election, people thought, actually, the bad guy's that beardy one who wants to help Russia or something like that because that's what they'd seen on the BBC. And he supports Hezbollah and he does all these things. He's the evil guy. And the good guys are these British guys who, like, wear suits and you know, talk in posh voices because we're used to that, because we're comfortable with that because we watch the BBC. And we're familiar with those type of people. We're not familiar with an allotment guy, you know. So they kind of went down that. But I think deep down they did know, Like, everyone knew that Boris Johnson was a horrible person. No one said, oh, he's nice. No one said he tells the truth. They
Nick
said he was
Hancock,
a liar.
untrustworthy.
Yeah,
Untrustworthy.
and he completely is, but it didn't seem to matter because of the posh voice, I think.
Kerry, sort of, I won't read these things, and I think Hancock's coming out of it better than Oakeshott. Is Isabel Oakeshott the baddie in this situation?
I cannot abide that woman. I genuinely cannot abide her. She said that a packet of porridge would feed a family for £1. I cannot abide that woman. She's another out of touch, hypocritical Tory, as far as I'm concerned. A posh bird who knows not. And that really bugged me. But I've got to give her some due. Like, although it might just be to shoot her career up the path, she's like clarified what us four on here tonight are saying, that we all knew what they were up to during the COVID pandemic. We all, us lot, knew what they were up to. And I think that seeing it in the public light and them text me, I mean, Gavin Williamson slagging off teachers, honestly, what, they're just so out of touch, and that really bothered me. And I know, like, Piers Morgan is the most hated person, but he was spot on, like, during that COVID pandemic time, about calling these out, and what he was saying has actually now been clarified in print, which we all knew in the same breath as well. And I think that Matt Hancock's not going to stand in the next general election. So I don't know whether it's a bit of timing from Matt Hancock, the Tories, and that posh bird who doesn't think she's a Tory, but she is. And I don't know whether it's a bit deliberate, in my opinion, because people are going to buy this book now and want to read it, like the Harry book. People are going to buy this book now and read it to clarify what she said. I don't know. I just think it's all a bit, they're taking the public for mugs yet again.
That's a really interesting thought, Kerry. Thank you very much indeed. She may be a horrible person who's done it for completely wrong reasons, but in fact, actually, it turns out it's in the public interest what she's.
Yeah.
And the suspicion that the whole thing is just, well, it's the same as Roald Dahl last week, isn't it? Is it just a publishing ploy? Jane, Kerry's answered your question. Is it an item of public interest? The question is, should all these things have been left to the proper public inquiry? And has this these revelations in fact queered the patch of the proper public inquiry? Because certainly the chair of the proper public inquiry thinks so.
I'm not so sure. I think we've waited a long time for the inquiry to start, and in the meantime, we're all aware that it seems that lots of information has been deleted and disposed of, so it will never get to the inquiry. And there's been so little transparency. I was reading Open Democracy have been putting in freedom of information requests since March 2021 to see Matt Hancock's official diaries for his time as health minister. The government won't give them to them. They've said the claim's vexatious. I think Open Democracy are looking to have to go through the courts to get access to these now. And the same, they'd also asked for the minutes to the government's lessons learnt session on this, and they won't hand those over either. So I think there has been so little transparency that I'm kind of glad that a bit more stuff's been put in the public forum, because I don't have a lot of confidence in what's being given to the inquiry. I certainly don't feel like the inquiry will have all of the information they should have at their disposal. And I think I personally feel frightened of more and more information being deleted and things being hushed over. I don't mean to cast aspersions on the people leading the inquiry. I don't mean that about them, but it just feels like there's some very influential people who seem to have been getting their way an awful lot and seem to have already managed to cover up a huge amount. And the lines for me as to where their power and influence ends are starting to get blurry, because I'm shocked at what they've already got away with. So at least now this stuff is in the open and it reveals things not just about him, but about a lot of other people in the government. That's something they can't take away. That's something concrete that we have, that we can say, no, we know this.
I mean, for me, the most shocking things were the fact that they absolutely damn well knew what effect their policies were going to have on the care homes. That for me is the crucial thing. That sort of, they knew that they were just sort of going to kill all these old people, and they still went ahead. I mean, there are some things.
Disgusting. Like, God forgive me saying this out loud, I've worked in care for donkey's years, worked in care homes, everything like that. God forgive me for saying this out loud, but it was literally the send our elderly lambs to the slaughter. And that's how they had the respect for our elderly, sending them back into care homes, and the people who were in them care homes, they were like lambs to the slaughter. And I don't say that lightly, it's just my terminology. And
My late wife, Kelly, my late wife was convinced that they were doing it on purpose to reduce the pensions burden, and that there was financial. I don't know whether she was right or not, but certainly she was adamant about it.
John, a woman's always right, are we?
I know that. And last question to Kerry. Sort of, when I said that Hancock had come out of it quite well, as far as I could see, do you think he's come out of it well or and badly? I mean, what's your view on the verdict on Hancock and his time as? I mean, the reason he handed them over was because he thought that they would justify his position as health minister. That they would sort of help restore his reputation. Do you think that they have done?
No, this man's got no shame. This man has got no shame. He went into I'm a Celebrity to promote his, I can't say it because I'm actually like that myself, dyslexia book. He didn't. He just, one thing that gets me about Wanksockers, and I will call him Wanksock, I absolutely despise this bloke, and he is Wanksock, in my opinion. He sat on national TV crying like this on telly.
Hang on, wasn't that his nickname from Gavin Williamson, though? Wasn't that what they called him? Like, the Tory ministers were actually calling him that at one point.
Wanksock, because he's, honestly, I don't really mean to speak inappropriately on this show, but he's an absolute stain on society, a man stain on society, and I cannot abide the bloke, and he's got no morals about himself. He's earned millions, so why is he bothering anybody?
Thank you. Jane, do you agree?
He is a despicable person for the things he's done. I definitely agree with that.
Sorry, I'm bad with my words, I know.
Our last, oh dearie me! Thank you for your everybody. The last question we've got is about another Wanksock, perhaps even more literally than the last one, and it's about a chap called Stephen Bear.
Oh God!
Sort of, we seem to have got Kerry on a soapbox. So I'm going to. Do you want to tell us what all the story is about? And sort of then I'll have another question. Tell us about the story. What's going on, Kerry?
Stephen Bear is a reality TV star. He was with a girl called Georgia Harrison, who they taped a sex video, and he made 40 grand on this site called OnlyFans, sharing this sex video without her consent, which is technically porn revenge. This bloke is absolutely disgusting. On the first day of the court trial, he hired a Rolls Royce to take him there, thinking he was the big I am, where technically, in my terminology, right, and I'm speaking again, probably out of the thing here. He's got small, you-know-what syndrome, in my opinion. And he has to clarify his behaviours by thinking he's whatever. I mean, you only have to look at his Twitter to look at what kind of an individual he is. He thinks the world owes him a big favour. And because of his revenge porn tactics, he actually got jailed for 21 months this week, which is an amazing thing for girls who have endured that, or women who have endured that technically, or men who've endured that, to be fair. And I think that 21 months, you might think, oh, that's not long, but it's a big thing. And Georgia Harrison, who's like totally waved her anonymity about it all, as I think the girl has been, the lady has been, woman, and I'm not allowed to say lady, sorry, John.
Lady, we're not allowed to say it. Yes,
But you said earlier.
Yeah, thank God you're saying it as well.
I think that this girl is totally, she's waved her right away in anonymity, and she's been so brave and everything by doing that, and he's got 21 a month for it. And I think it's because of Stephen Bear, he's an absolute moron in society. I think that he's maybe like set like a boundary for others, and I think that other people might be thinking, well, if Stephen Bear can get 21 months, the money he's got, what's stopping me getting longer? If you know what I mean. So I think it might be a bit of a deterrent.
I mean, that was my second question to you, Kate. The second question to you was, I mean, do you, the BBC said it sends a message, sort of a whole load of people popping up saying this will deter people in the future from this kind of crime. I mean, but he was laughing and joking when he went out and sort of and said, have a good weekend, everybody. He doesn't seem on the surface that he's bothered. Do you think it will be a deterrent to a social media in general, and this OnlyFans site in particular, which is awash with this kind of thing? Do you think it will be a deterrent?
I do believe that, because Stephen Bear's a character. He holds his persona. He thinks he's whatever. And I think that if it's been shared on a public platform, OnlyFans, which is grim in itself, in my opinion. But I think that if you look on social media, like TikTok, Twitter, I mean, you only have to look at this bloke's Twitter, and the woman, like his girlfriend, he beyond violates her, although she's in agreement with it. But yeah, I think it will, because before this case and he got like sentenced, he was deemed untouchable, where his sentence has deemed him not to be untouchable. And I good on Georgia Harrison, who waved her anonymity. I mean, this girl was in Love Island and everything, and good on the girl who's done it. And I think it might.
Just very quickly before I move on. Georgia Harrison, I thought, I agreed with you. I thought she handled herself with dignity. And well done to her. But she did say that she hoped that the judgment of Stephen Bear would be a solace for other victims. And I thought that rang a bit hollow to me. That sort of, do you think the fact that Stephen Bear has got it will be a solace for people who've suffered this, and the person who did it to them got away with it? Do you agree with her, or do you think that she was going a bit far when she said that?
No, I totally agree with it, because Stephen Bear's deemed as this untouchable character who earns millions of pounds from doing what he's done. And I think it might bring, like, if Stephen Bear can not get away with it and he's deemed as this prolifically big figure, what's stopping Joe Bloggs down the road getting away with it? And I think it might encourage other young girls or women or men or anything like that to come forward about what's happened to them.
Essex Live conducted a poll. Was it too tough or not tough enough? And 82% of the people who replied said it wasn't tough enough. Would you have given it longer?
Yeah, I would. I think it was like, although the sentencing was unexpected, like the amount of time he got, he should be like deemed for, like, he should be put away for a long time. He's absolutely annihilated and humiliated a young woman. And I think it's disgusting for it. He earned £40,000 from sharing this video. £40,000. I mean, I'm not being funny. How many people on this panel earn 40 grand a year? Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, he took his private video and shared it for his own gain. And I think he should have been given a lot longer. But I think he'll suffer his sentence in prison. And I do genuinely believe that. I think he'll suffer in prison.
Be interesting to see what he's like when he comes out. The law that he broke was displaying private sexual photos with an intent to cause distress.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
the fact that he'd done it with an economic to exploit the economic value of that was the reason that the sentence was so harsh. I've got a question. I want to talk about. I want to become more metaphysical about the issue, Jane, and I want to talk about the wider societal implications. Sort of what I want to is that revenge porn is now against the law, and it's seen as being something wicked and evil, and everybody's very much against it. And yet you can go on the internet and people take delight in revenge stories. And the one that we discussed earlier, the two of us, is the woman who'd been sort of cheated on by her husband, and he moved his girlfriend into their house. So before she moved out, she filled the curtain rails with shrimps, which of course smelled worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And they redecorated, and they had the fumigators in, and all kinds of people. And people take delight in these. They think these revenge stories are amusing. And so my question is that why is society so hostile to this kind of revenge story, when it's in fact other things of revenge, which in fact can be psychologically just as damaging, and sort of sometimes which involve physical violence rather than just the distress of being shown on film. So why do you think, or do you think that it's right that society has this distinction? Can you explain that to me?
So I think firstly what I would say that perhaps revenge porn isn't named very well, because I think it's probably rarely done for the reasons of revenge that you might think of. I think when you read about a story where someone's done something nasty to someone who they feel has hurt them, I don't know. I don't feel it's quite the same. It's often not the same reasons. I mean, certainly it wasn't in this case. I don't think he's done this to get revenge on her particularly. He's just been very selfish and seen an opportunity for himself. So, but I would also say that I don't want to sound holier than thou, but I wouldn't particularly take enjoyment out of reading those stories generally anyway. I'm not sure it is healthy in us, and the social media algorithms that are throwing these things out, I think we all know that they're not healthy. They're not made in a good way. They're made to bring out very negative emotions in us that don't help us socially to develop. So and I think, I mean, it's a really broad question. I'm not sure. I mean, sewing prawns in or shrimps into the curtain rail, I mean, it's not a nice thing to do, but it's not, certainly wouldn't have the impact on someone's life. Yes, it was a huge convenience and it was very upsetting for them, but that's not the same as the huge personal violation of putting photographs or videos of someone online. And the thing with this is that once files are online, you can't necessarily get them back. Even if you want to, you can't necessarily take them off. They're always going to be out there. So, and that could potentially destroy someone's life for the rest of their life. There's no area of their privacy that's not invading, and all of their loved ones.
I'm going to ask Paul about that in a little moment, but just very briefly, Jane. I mean, the Essex police said that they regarded it as a sort of the equivalent of male violence, abuse and misogyny, and that was the reason why they were trying to reduce that. So I mean, is this a sort of, and Kezia Dugdale in the Scottish Evening Standard says, you know, we never ask questions about the men, sort of, do you think that maybe is the reason why this is so prominent, that it's in fact it's an issue of male violence upon women?
We've got a growing issue with toxic masculinity, which is being exacerbated, I personally think, by the growing inequalities in our society. It's not to say we shouldn't all take responsibility for our actions, but I do think that the more you damage someone through life, the more likely they are to make bad choices. I don't know if I've worded that very well.
No, you're brilliant. That's a brilliant point. Thank you so much. Last question to Paul, just very briefly, Paul. We sort of have not left you long enough for this question. As far as I see it, there were pictures on the internet of two people having sex. And if you'd have not known them, because I didn't know either of them, if I'd happened across it, and I would never have watched OnlyFans, but there we go. If I hadn't happened across it, it would have just been two people having sex. Now, my question is this: why is the man in that situation regarding it as a triumph, as a joke, as something that builds up his reputation, and the woman, the victim, it's a humiliation and embarrassment? These are two human beings that are having sex. Why is the revenger, the perpetrator, sort of regarded as a hero, and the other person regarded as a victim? Well, I would have thought, in terms of who I despise, it's the other way around. I despise the man, and the man doesn't come out of it well for me at all when I know that. What's going on in society that causes this arse-upness?
I think it's a cultural thing. It's cultural misogyny. I think if you look back at other things, like if you look at another famous case where, like Pamela Anderson, where she had her sex tapes shared, and people thought because she was like, she'd done nudes and things like that consensually, that like she's fair game. And I remember when those sex tapes came out, like, and people like, oh yeah, I'm gonna watch it, I'm gonna buy this on the internet and so on. And I watched the documentary about her recently, and the way people spoke about her, and she was saying, stop that, they were stolen from me. This is really upsetting to me, and people were making it a big joke on chat shows. You had these horrible misogynistic, I think it was Jay Leno was going on, like, and he was like, oh, when have I ever made a joke about it? And she said, all the time, you're joking about it every single week, and this is hurting my feelings. She talked about how it affected her kids through her life, and how they felt about it. And then, like, I think back to the kind of horrible 90s culture where you had someone like Chris Evans just being a weird perv every single time a woman came on his show, and he was like, I watched a video of her, like Louise Weiner from Sleeper, on there dealing with him in such a way, and it's so cringy. But apparently we're in a society that, like, shame doesn't seem to bother people, and it goes back to everything we've talked about tonight. We're in a society that promotes the shameless. This awful kind of behaviour is rewarded, whereas, like, decent humanity, treating people with respect, seems to be the last thing on people's agenda. I don't think that that's a natural feeling for people. I think that's forced on us, and I do think it's part of the patriarchal system that has grown around us. But that's not how I feel as a human being. I don't want to humiliate people. I want people to be happy. I want people to feel comfortable. And if you're sharing an intimate moment with someone, you don't go and flog it afterwards. It's absolutely disgraceful behaviour. So yeah, I agree with you, John, that the people should feel humiliated. But society is such at the moment that shameless people are getting it all their own way.
Thank you so much, and what a wonderful way to bring the show to a very timely end. I would just point out that the sort of when I asked that question, a whole load of our politicos came on, and and with some fabulous comments, which I haven't got time to share. I'm calling you politicos, but sort of, have you got a different name? Sort of think about it over the week, and then sort of you can email me, or you can come on my Facebook site and tell me what you think your name ought to be, sort of, or on the Socially Think Tank site.
Change UK, call us Tankies.
Tankies, the Tankies, that would be brilliant, yes. I don't know. It sounds a bit rude, doesn't it? But anyway, so they come up with a name.
I'm not saying now,
going
I'll
to
end up swearing.
hand over to Paul for the final goodbye. Thank you ever so much for being with us, everybody. You've been great today. Paul.
Thank you for being the other panel members, the audience tonight. Really, really good comments. Absolutely brilliant. Spread the word, stick together, do all the things you do. Please do subscribe to all of us on all of our different things. If you just watch us on Facebook, please go over to YouTube and click subscribe, because it just helps. If you've got a Google account, you can do it. And the same on all the other platforms. Have a look at us on Twitter and things like that. Share our posts, do that kind of thing. Also get involved with other people in Independent Media Association, because part of the reason that we see all these shameless people being promoted is because they own the media. We need to get around this somehow. We need to stick together. Cow Daly, who's been on, Think Become, who's Dan Lewis, coming on as well. Those kind of people are breaking through the barriers if we allow them to. So let's promote one another as independent media. Let's tell everyone how brilliant those opinions are, and how brilliant the opinions of ordinary people like Kerry and like Jane and like John, who are just good people, can change society for the better. If people were listening to us, I think loads of people would agree with what we're saying. This should be the mainstream, or there should be loads of little pockets like this where decent people are talking amongst themselves in their own little communities. That's the way we need to build. So look after each other, do all those things, go on Socialist Think Tank, become a member, listen to hopefully if you're listening to our podcast, you're enjoying as well. And I think we didn't make any visual only things today anyway, so that's pretty good. Stick together, and we'll see you all next week. And we've got quite a few exciting things coming up as well. We're going to be exploring the different parties over the next few weeks that may be out there as an alternative to Change UK, who are okay, have a and thanks to John for hosting brilliantly as always, and thanks to the rest of the panel, and we will see you all very, very soon. Take care, everyone.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Keep the red flag flying here.